Welcome everyone to the afternoon question and answer session with Khenpo Tenzin and with Ina. And so we again have had to reword some of the questions to streamline everything so there's enough time for Khenpo to answer all the questions thoroughly. And thank you for your understanding. We'll get started.
So the first question is, could you please give advice for meditation for people with a birth trauma? When I meditate, sometimes I experience panic attacks. Yeah, kasi konso kid po chung de kid ba? Ni konso dis kang trees pena koran so go kasi koran so ama gingal so tengi yora ba? Ni konso go ta uti MG ke lega yapo male ta na yora ba? Ta din da ba phakshak shibo so go yora la pe to. Tini din da bo yores koran konding a phakshak ra. Tini ko samjang la kom gyap tu tini pe ngam ta chi ge to. Tini khara chi go res ti ka ba. Kom gyap tu.
Tachetang ngamtra la phinya yakhu de chetang yakhu mangbo yorete ngarang samna de ningje gomje de karchimboris gom jinda jak yona yang tene tarong ngamtra je watandra yongdo ko yona tene ningje je ngamtra chesa ke ti yorte 소소라 양은 먹는 라오지 샤용하다 양은 제 안레조 단으로라 그래 샤나들라 닌지 제지 특가침보래 드니 양 요르치 먼라오다 심진 임바케 샤마요나양 드니 드가잔치 소소소 징암라로 젠도고요나 드니 양테스 제 수솔로티 남바이나 수솔라 라마요로 라마라 소안데 tene tekar chimbo yore tene yedam tsolo so anda trachina boyores.
So when panic arises, it is so for fear there are many good methods, but I think what's very important is to cultivate compassion. So then if you do that and then it's still, so if you try to meditate but you're still feeling of panic coming up, then if what comes up is like a person that comes up in your mind or like some kind of demon and so on, then if there's an object, then cultivate compassion for it. And then if nothing arises in the mind, if it's just for no reason the fear arises, then if you're a Buddhist, then you can supplicate to the Lama, the Guru, or the Yidam deity. You mentioned a breathing technique called vase breath. Could you give a brief instruction on that? Is this related to Rinpoche's teachings on the Om Mahong Vacha recitation?
Chetang Om Mahong dorji deba sibadalan drawa yore long ke nyamlin de son drawa yores ta yin yang ta so ke de long zungyan de zo chikhun de cha de yore da long dang sem nin drawa yo chimbo yore long de da na yi cha de yore sem de da de hyun ne roking ke ganza de da na yin cha de yo za tene di jum sen de ne long dang sem de nin drawa chimbo yores tene da long pampa jin shi ba zung dang de jirtang da nyamne gang kan sa ya bo ri de du mixa ken be zor ma je ne ya lu chok changbo sangwa jamji cho ko yore sung ba re de nga su sa pa ndo ji na yang te san be zor ji go le se long pampa jin lang sang zong to ya yong go yo ma re de yin za lu cho a changbo sang se ju de ka chin ji re luso hajang jambo sanya yomar da dewa wola ma nyema mayong so go son namjo gu ju so na dana song ko yore namjo la mi gu ju so na
가르송요래?
dewa wola ma nyema yo nyema mayong sam de zam ke luso sam wo ke chegin rawo ji chang ko yore teni da de
냐마세는 누구시르는래?
nyema ste nga zo de fuwa hyol je de se khan chim bo na ma chin cheng do da na cheng ma cheng do yo na ko sang sang yong wa ste zang go do teni da teni de your parane da che zo glo di sor judo zam kchan ni halam ta chuba de sor judo zan chan din long de chongom de din jam long tarpo wen ma ngob na teni ngom de long de ma dewa ke o sa de so sala la de teni su su ge di ni ba ne man chi ma ro dra mi ba tarpo chi ma ni na de ge ma cha zo glo di long de ma
치마냠도?
chi ma ma ni go ro de
만니고라?
chi ma ni na dra mi ba ge chi ma tarpo chi ma ni na di dra de ge ran yin ge di ge long de bo bo la man ro to go yo re so teni wolong te ta ya hyukchen bon tin jo ma res teni ko lusok sang teni ti ke tewa wo ke tarang rang so tewa wo ni pa te sa ya slow la cha chozo go tewa chum burn du teni wolong te rang yin ga te so ngom yong go yo res teni tena wi de tewa wo lo ta ti nda cha yong go yo re long pa pa jin se ko pompa go zob ta da wo ji jin bo ti chan ne long pa pa jin se ta yong ba re
데바실로 람보고라?
tewa o pa te slow ba go do
고라. So any of these practices that are related to the winds are also related to the Amahong Vajra recitation. And so for the vase breathing, so mainly first we need to understand that there's a connection between the winds and the mind. And so the winds are like a horse and the mind is like the person who rides the horse. So there's this connection. And then for the practice of the vase breathing, if you're already accustomed to the practice, then you don't have to make a great effort. And by just sitting up with a straight back, it will actually also happen naturally. But if you're new to the practice, then you have to make some effort. It will not just happen on its own. So for one, to have a straight back is important, but then also it shouldn't be like overly straight. And so then below the place where you're holding the winds for the vase breathing is below the navel, that in the form kind of like a capsule, like an enclosure, which is below the navel, where you're pushing down the upper winds and then pulling up the lower winds that create this enclosure. And then when you're inhaling the air, one should inhale about the 16-finger width of the air, which is a gentle and a slow inhalation. So then the wind goes down to below the navel. And also before that, you should, as the winds go down, you swallow your saliva, but in a very gentle way, so not so that it produces a sound. And then with the swallowing of the saliva, that brings then the air that you have inhaled naturally down to below the navel. And then, so the air goes down, and then when you pull up the lower winds, you shouldn't do that too forcefully. And then also when the wind is then retained in this enclosure here below the navel, then the navel slightly kind of bulges, kind of extends a little bit. And so in this way, when you hold this, then you're naturally holding the vase breath.
Chertang long jorwa yidin se yore tena ne tara onga hon dordi de bala jorwa som de dan rewa cha yore te inza jorwa som de long gang was in tambo long chungupare tambo long teni gang seba the long des zongwa dere om zonde long chungup teni a kapso de tebo de la long de jungze ma zong tambo ka su tam bezo zong go yorwa teni komso na bezo ma go bech teni hong se ni pa long de solon dompo kapso cha go yore 다 롱조와 이디는 조와 숨데 다 온돌지데 바단 레와요 바레스
Normally, when we practice the winds in this way, it is said that this breathing possesses four a kind of steps or four aspects, and the Amahong would be one that possesses three of those four aspects. And so that is when you inhale the air with so that's the first aspect, the first step, so inhalation with and then the retaining of the air below the navel by thinking is the second step. So in the beginning, one has to make a bit of an effort, but once you're habituated to it, it becomes effortless. And then with the exhalation, you think Hong. So the Amahong has three of those four aspects.
테닝 다 히직 지선 티 좋아 담보 되는 테니 다 곰장도 다른 희낭지 용바이나 희낭도 그런 공그 띵스네 된 곰나 덱된데 핑거 요레스
Actually, there's one thing I forgot to mention about the first question, about the panic attacks. And so when you meditate and a panic attack occurs, then what you can also do is that you make the panic itself the object of meditation. Are there any requirements for practicing the following mantras? Do you have the mantras? No. Are they okay to practice without long wang or permission from a lama? And are they okay to share freely with others?
단데서 왕롱 요바이나 가레이나 야보요레 드니 라마게히니 케트라케 까 나네 저게 송마데 소이나 야보요레스 얘네 양단데서 다른 슈팅 그 존데 소이나 데 소소게 냐민지 장초성 그 지선선한데 가르침보요레 데 지심바지 고요레 토마르 장초성 그 지심바지 조롱호와 그 제타바지 데 이나퍼디 양제 소소 게 on the hinto on the one came down in the perjawa mayamba 장초성의 ninji 군나는 페나 nd게 요레 그래서 양 타지드 가사포진 그 드나데 차고요 말와
tensura. So that goes for any mantra or any practice like that, if you can receive empowerment or transmission, then that is the best. Also, if you can receive a permission from a lama, that is good. But then if it's just these mantras, which are mainly the clouds of offering mantras and so on, for these mantras, you don't really necessarily have to receive the lung and so on. But what's most important is that you have bodhicitta. So you begin it with bodhicitta and you end it with dedication. And regarding sharing it with others, you can share it with others, but you shouldn't share it in a kind of arrogant way, acting like you know all about it. But you should give it out of loving kindness and compassion.
참자는 가서 냠리지디 난등네 제냠린데 다버지 투사 말에 삼산로 요나야 당아랑 가르치나 좀디 좀 ngak 냠린데 yinla pin tayak chi de nyamlin da se bala tene che soso nyawan raw ka hi china chi samsan raw chi lutong raw thon de devi thamna de ko jumde ko wang de sena samsa lemde yo sipare de yinla pin tok de chane ang dele kepin chi wa sunam chi wa thagurwa de de chi pare.
So sometimes also what's a similar scenario is that sometimes when we practice, then we feel that one shouldn't share that and so on. And so then if one feels that it could be beneficial, however, then that would kind of overpower the thought of we shouldn't do it. So then you would just think, whatever happens to me, let it happen. For example, even if I have to go to hell, if it means to go to hell in order to help somebody, then it would still be more beneficial to help somebody. And so, of course, from the perspective of karma, it's still possible that one aspect, a negative aspect of karma will ripen, but also the benefit of the altruistic intention and the merit of this altruistic intention is far greater. Do we have to do Dharma protector or smoke offering daily if we are practicing the Yidam?
Alright, 단도 야보 요령네 전에 따라 상 기반들라 하장게 ngarandoina sata chungchong ni be sang hyubin donyo kantar chungchong de da japan ro je gompa da pa song ni zonde de sang de donyo ware de dambo donggang e nandong shira ha ma de yang ro je da ya bo ma je yor de la che xin cha ro yor ma do da remji don de sang de la nandong pe teng sa bo re je do nga ke che samne hyubi yo de ba za ma che ba ge tin na che ngune ke che 가르조글로 난동 지 응네 야보 요데바 상데라 지 다다리도 교대인자 간다르 상데 장촉 셈지 신소나 상데 지 잠벨레라 잠레 선코요라 누주 자마조야 그chen 코욕 숭조 나주지 셈진라 내몽 축주 탐지 히야 그제 하람 지 미야바게 레가레데 조타다 tan kantan de chi gari ten sam tawa na so so kunhong de zam ton di sang de jing don tan na darang ngarang sun don de sang de lang ne to ma ma yin ba ke teng sa bu hue re ya de don tan na chora yedam nyamli chi bu ka dam ma je bu ka yin na don tan ya bo yore teni so so ke le tan long da do so ta ya la da yang tim der ke wang ke da la jetang ti chi de ba le zambo tang long da ya da kar ji wang tang ya da ya sa wa lang ro yong ya do so la pink yo re sang de ke teni dara chu jong de sa ke so ga de sun dong ya de de yang je jier san ji tim ba da wa dang teni san ji tim ba da wa de yang je sim jin tam ji le de ji yong wa chi de da hyo sam ba to ni teni ngarang choke de soka sundung tadav tumba ina te ke pinto chimbo yongko yore jumsin kan la se na ndi sungman de choke sanje shakja to pa ni zonde de ne ngoro rombo je la soba ke de ne lama de trupta mambo je gun de ne ke lang dam je ya bari le jumde yabo sungkin dang de ne chu yabo jungkin dang teni ma yarab churdin de so lange sungchup jigi ins tizen koran so ke kelang yaware te ngarang su tara no ndi da choran so kelang wa te sip lega ke lebetul papsong sen pa je da na wa tang ka yorwa te inza teni de so don da ya bo yores.
It would be good to practice the smoke offering. When I was young, for example, in the monastery, the monks have to recite the smoke offering all the time. So I recited it a lot, but in the beginning, I didn't really understand the meaning of it. But I did really like the melody of it. And then slowly, I began to understand its very profound meaning, and really included are very profound points of both the sutras and the tantras. So it has a very profound meaning. And so when you practice the smoke offering, you cultivate first a bodhicitta, and the purpose of the smoke offering is to purify the world, your surroundings, the universe, all sentient beings, and also to protect sentient beings from all illness and harm and weapons and so forth. So it performs like a healing activity. And so if you really think about the meaning of it and have a pure motivation when doing the smoke offering, then this particular smoke offering that we are doing really is very special and it's very profound. So it's good to do it, whether you're practicing a yidam or not. And also through practicing the smoke offering, positive karmas can become kind of awakened, and then your various activities and aspirations will be accomplished, and so on. Regarding the Dharma Protector practice, where we make offerings to the Dharma Protectors, in general, we do that for the sake of spreading the Dharma in the world. And so, in particular, we should think that may the Dharma spread in the world for the happiness of all sentient beings. So the Dharma Protector practice is also very beneficial, also because those protectors, they have taken a vow to protect us, starting from the Buddha Shakyamuni and until Guru Rinpoche and so forth, many great gurus and siddhas and so on. In their presence, those protector beings have taken a commitment saying that I am going to protect those who follow the law of karma and those who practice the Dharma well and those who are of a good nature. We're going to protect them. And so therefore, by us reciting the sadhana of the Dharma protectors, it is like we are sending out like a sign, saying that this is now the time has come to perform these activities.
Sangdo in a pen churant terrain le catching gozo, does Zakarmando, Zin and Zakartaya or Tandayabu Majomba ina, Churante Hako, Namdo Shanguna, in Santo, Santos and Namdo Ser, Namdo Certain, Sendo Yoroa. Then it Dharma protector in the Zoina, then a lad Dorji Yanene, Drupapo Kalanis, and Sanjet and then the gave him in Gurum Bachelasoba, Coranzola, Chezobolo, Coranzo Keta, Tamja Yabaris, Kandar, then Chunyamlin sinking and just Sunjo Chigan Sena. Then leg one getting in that collect Tago Yorimatoke, Garchin Parchin, or in a Mamboja Sertoko.
So sometimes when we do a certain activity, we're starting a certain activity and then we check the calendar, the astrology, and it turns out that it's not the best time to start this activity. So then if we have some thoughts about that, some doubts and so on, and then practice the smoke offering, that could clear that away. And what's really cleared away is the thought, the thinking, because it's the thinking really that creates the difficulty. And so regarding those protectors, so they have taken the commitment, the promise in the presence of the Buddha and Guru Rinpoche and so forth to protect the Dharma practitioners. And so that is what they do. But of course, if we have karma, then often due to the force of karma, we still have to purify our karma. But other than that, they really have the power to dispel various obstacles and like negative circumstances. Please give us guidance as to how to choose the one deity to focus on. I think Gachin Rinpoche's is the white Tara. Who is yours?
The Dangachi Sevande. So check da churang ke yedam kan sin tu yedam da so so lama da sun rawon rawre da sin tu de ba dang mugu tu da ro jie yong ba da mixa ke chi cho an ro ji yong ba na de ji wang ha ma ni so so la dan da ga le ba cha yo ba da ji de ni wang tu ma yu ba ngu la dan da ke ma zong ba na wang hu de de ni malam ta ba se yo re Dunkorwan chin to Union na Churan so yore the Zak so Ding nghe the Rabin. Titi got some Malanta so Tang Yore, that Tela Soba Gachi, then so ke Malam Latane, young Yadam Susu Yadan Hakoya Dang, 다做的他们让进步个叫做个咯，他这样嘛也不去做的叔叔个这对吧当da yadam nang ge che deba zo xiao san ro kan da dan ro ji ji teni yang je cham chang da ngarang zo darong danjin yu ba yin za yang che ngudop tham je la rewa chi yin du yang che so so ge te drum ne te johnson sam san ro dan da yu na teni tin na ya bo yu da yadam de tin ba de la yang yadam 냠니 지도 체다 딘바 돈다 냠니 지다 이담대 체딘지 던다 된 거지 같이 물어봐
Kikerang di sorry. Ay sila la kora. Sila la.
질라
So if you have to pick which yidam to practice, so a yidam is also very similar to a lama. So sometimes when you meet a lama or you hear their name and so on, a special feeling arises. Devotion of faith naturally arises. So if that arises, it's a sign that you have a karmic connection to that particular yidam from a previous life. And so sometimes also when we are receiving an empowerment, we are told to watch our dreams. For example, when we receive the Kala Chakra empowerment, we are given this Gusha grass that we sleep on, and then that night we have to watch our dreams. And this is also one way of determining one's main yidam deity. But we don't only determine the yidam deity through dreams. Mainly what's most important is which deity you have the greatest devotion of faith in. But so it is also because we still have self-grasping, that we have hopes in certain cities or accomplishments. So we think that if I practice this, then this will happen. So then it's also fine to practice this particular deity, but the deity has to be practiced properly.
다 nga yedam sare se jite ngarani nga te sang nga ta nga ne ngu la nge twa ti ya ba re nga yedam sare se ngarang ngarang ti ya za twa tin ki nga nga sang ngarang lin ra chare ba si twa tin ki chana train ti ro ba nga yedam sare se nge nga ma ni nga yedam sare se ti cha ne nga la lin tap chare se ten da yin za te ne 다
Kerang lenda tsara.
ngang yedang so yamba ha ko tsas sonza dereng ta kala ga twa tin king nga cha nga khesang ra ro te din ja go budas chora tingwa tambo yin na chora hima yin ta nge lin ja go ro ta
So regarding who is my yidam deity, unfortunately, you're a bit too late to ask this question because this question was already asked to me in the past, and I was the one who's asking myself that question. I asked myself, who is my deity? And when I asked that question, I received an answer. So I already know who is my deity. So I already know it, so then therefore I don't have to answer the question again. The question is already answered. So if you had asked me before I asked myself, then I would have to answer you.
oh yeah
Is it possible to practice a sadhana without the tsok when I have little time? And because I didn't receive any instructions on tsok, can I do it only visualizing?
ngarang su namju de tu yomir de na choan don de cho dra mdom mangbo yong yo re de chung ko yo mare de semra go yo mare es yang cho de sun don ya ke tu komba chong den chari na yang don dra na cho shi ba de zo chi hyu de xia kwa nang ge da tablan ya bo ji cha de yo re sang ha ka su tam chai nyam cha tam ji xia ya la yinne yang choran tu ma jong tendari du yang mingsa ke tenda semra na wo goyan ro tan tel ji ngarang chu namju chogan don du chela se chum di chepa tin nan ro yo mare che chum ju nan ro yo mare de yinne da dawa chik nana che tuzang tenala tene yang jing don tana yabo yore.
So it happens that when we don't have time to do a talk, then we can't recite it. So then, if that's the case, if you just don't have the time, then that is fine, and you don't have to worry about it. If you do have time, then also include the talk. The talk is also a skillful way to confess and purify negativities, and also to purify any kind of broken or transgressed samayas or vows. So, but if you don't have time, then you don't worry about it, because sometimes we speak about purifying omissions and additions. So you do not create the fault of omission by not reciting it. But for example, if you have time once a month on a special day, then it would be good to do the talk. And Tini ko chok tang na yang korang yang to nyamna yo marava tini tamanta ta
nyamyo
choka salen ramen da yosa rava dana ma da wala sapa tini ti mikpa chikpo kon na tigi rava
re dan de mikpa gon salen de so hi goya de dan garchen bo re ngone de yina ya da 做起去的山林了，是能上山那个能山林的gar起不就恰的有了，但的没把工过有了，没把工的说个错的说，啥样不搞说这他们儿把个么难因为呢，但你什么错在的他们个错什么难因素的呢？得容可有么嘞？错重庆说说样，还是个让了工过有的是，工呢，但你错个。 제 de tamje teni hyanga dus tara de tamjal chor journey teni tana ben chon chuji de karchim bo cha de yore teni cho ke ngo de chola ramyang kam la so ba tang om a hong ha ho she sin yige nga yore ta to la to yun de mi ba ji go yore teni ben zhuwa sangwa jangwa la so ba tana ka ton mi ba che ne teni pewa ha ho she la so ba de ong a hong ke sin ja la ha ho she ke teni ya jang do pel se ya jang nu pa ro ju la so ba tan je puson so ba che ba ta wen teni so so chen chu ndu so so her ka la gom jo de gar chen bor sang ha tan hang lam se ba de da ra cho nang da na chap sang yong ge yo re so yipa borani tanang jangdu sosorani la yedang la gomde yore teni hyaze de duz tamje da hyaze si choje la soba tamje teni da duz ke jamso la gomne teta chugo yores.
And then how to practice the soak, and if you can just do the visualization. So in general, it is good to know. It is important to know the different ritualistic aspects of the talk. But the talk also has an outer, inner, and secret aspect, and of that, it's what the inner mind is most important, which is the visualization. So it's fine to visualize. But for example, when you're eating the talk substances, you shouldn't see yourself as ordinary, nor should you see the food as ordinary food. So the one who is eating the talk substances, you should visualize yourself as Heruka, and then the talk substances that you're eating are transformed into the 5 types of flesh and the 5 types of nectar. So, and you eat it from within such a state of awareness. Also, in the beginning of the talk, there are those syllables, Ram Yam Kam, Omahung, Hahu Shri. And so at that time with Omahung, first we are consecrating, and then with Hahu Shri, then you are also purifying and cleansing and increasing and so forth. So there's a purpose to that you should bring to mind. So when you practice the talk, you meditate on yourself as a Heruka, because the secret mantra is a path of pure view that also should be sustained in the Dzog. So the one who is eating the Dzog is the Yidam. You see yourself in a pure way, and also the Dzog substances you're eating, they are seen as like an ocean of nectar. Why is Tara sometimes referred to as a chakra or wheel?
단데리 너의 값수 시네스 생그 내차데 조위자라 탑라마모 띵용고요레 데니 람통세드 생그 사차조 메네 데니 검자당게 당화 띵크요레 데가 값수 지름 시바데 조 내차라 상 내차데 조 차앙고요레 대인장 따라데 롱가냠네 값수 조름 기바데 따라데 람통도 지바차도 요 대인장 따라 롱가냠네 값수 nga랑 중앙콜 고야라소반데 셈데 노르드나 셈데 전 셈당가 nga deke semsen zinya ka thapsi chi cha da yure namje ngaran so ke tam chibo la sam de guna yang cham cha de ya des kable khabo yorwa 가인스 나가란솔라 남도 쇼친 보여자 되네 한커 때서 한커 때한테 선낭 වෙන 되네 코당도 지인도 코랑인 게 되네 셈데 데그 쇼친 보존도 그 요래 다조 준신 조로 project 차도 요래 데 마인 바 준신가 해 요래스
So in the sutra path, we practice first shamatha, where the mind's ability to abide still is emphasized, and there's many different methods to do that. And then one moves on to vipassana, where the aspect of clarity is highlighted, and there's many methods to realize that. And in the tantric path, when we practice the visualization, the generation stage, that is the abiding quality. So when we practice White Tara, and it's the same for deities, so in the completion stage, Zorim gabla teni ngangthing gore. Zorim gabla khare.
Zorim chibada lamthong chiban chibara.
Lamthong chibara.
Jinram chada yora tarats.
And then the completion stage is the vipassana. So basically the generation is shamatha, and then the completion is vipassana. And for the visualization of the mantra wheel, so the mantra wheel is the mantra string, the circle, is a method to keep awareness of mind, so to sustain the mind with awareness. And sometimes it's difficult to only focus on, for example, the Dham syllable. So it's because we have a lot of very strong thoughts and afflictive emotions that so sometimes it is good to focus on the mantra circle. And so if you're able to hold on to that, then that will also help pacify the mind. Ina yang ti masuk drama giming saya tira, tela yang kolo, yising kolo, sungguh
drama main lai.
Yising kolo, tina baca kolo sungguh kolo, dupta berapa sih dupta nana yara.
Yising kolo dupta.
Kolo ra. Tini drama giming kolo ra. Tini mo tidang kong lara teni kong color marawa teni drama la color so ya shuya gamse karena
lao de ben dronka yijin kolo sendu de lo go kare tan la nan de sare de zo chikyu da ngar so kon ti kaps ngarang so te go yim ba kaps mi pa zo ji san ro je de ngarang so jupchen rong ka yin kholo gomdi tene ngangkhor te zo we na gomi gongko yorwa ti chane ta ya ba injury samsung 저당 다 콜로 히바된 틀레게 메인 차도 요르와 대인자 제 ngachope na main khibandala tatandala mambo yore jo main level phata yaba jo main level ta de pena nyema uzala tara
This gyu giming devola tara.
jo main level ta de nyema uzala nyema sita yaban raw tang teni jo main level ta ba ta te ta main ta chala mambo yore yang charen rewe main jo la ta yaba tang teni je main sebra la ta yaba tang je ke main
Jigiming.
je ta mambo je ke main perna ngala pena pupa se ta ya de pupa se de je ta je main ro ina nga ma kanza je la ma chu pupa re se de
Pepa giming re.
jimin de pumo la
Chitang giming.
je se de pupa se de ta majority ro cha de
Chitang giming
ro
ra.
dik main de ngal so ma che gala ta chora hey pupa se yo na nga ma to na pupa me nga ke main de lenger wa main de len ja ro this is of da no je ne main ta jang ta yo re ni zo par ko wang de ta ba yo re zo korang zo da par wa bi chen de korang de zo yin ba cha ni per nan de me to jing do se de la ta me to zo de nga so sound do sa del ta de di da ma so sound ta de ta yal ma do e chama e ma me to ma re wang mo de ina ngarang so ko to ba ti ta yin cha de yo
Regarding the question also why Tara is referred to as a wheel, so in the sadhana it's called the white Tara, the wish-fulfilling wheel or the wish-fulfilling chakra, and that could be understood in many different ways. And so, but mainly it is because when we engage in the practice of white Tara, then the main focus of our visualization is the mantra circle. And so therefore, probably that's why she's given that name. But so in general, a circle, for example, like a mantra circle and so on, can be given many different other names too. And so in general, there are different ways of giving names. For example, there's giving names, like naming something. So naming something where you infer the cause based on the result. For example, which means based on the sun rays, which is like the result of the sun. So through the sun rays, you're inferring the presence of the sun. So you're calling it the sun. And then, yes, it's the other way around. There's a way of one names something, one names an object something by looking at the cause that will lead to a certain result. Or one can name something like by naming something in general, by inferring a particularity by naming the general. So for example, which means in general, I'm a Tibetan, right? So then if somebody says, hey, you Tibetan, then if I'm the only Tibetan around, then I probably will look up, I will feel addressed. Even though that's not really my name, but it's like a general term to describe me, is Tibetan. So based on like a generalization, particularities are being named. And then another one is to name based on majority and what is principle, what it normally is. So for example, when you look at a flower and you say that's a flower, but maybe you're pointing at the stalk or the leaves or the petals of the flower, and not all of that is actually the flower.
다 간단한 저희 통통지 추바이는데라 이긴 걸로 그 따라 로마 롱가게 한컬라서 뭐 곰냠니 되는 한컬도서 곰네 되나 곰냠니 세발라티네 되니 로마 까모 그 틀레데 되니 착토미바 지 gordewan도 다 tuzu go ka dewan rawo tanche tanda maye ba kholong khorwana yin gundu tamje lamsang drop tongki che dan sunam tene chod tumang la so ngod tamje tanda ka chane ta ba cha de yoris.
And so to come back briefly to a white Tara and the wheel. So if one, also the reason why one may refer to it as a wish-fulfilling wheel or chakra is because through the practice of white Tara, and white Tara's enlightened activities are invoked, and these activities then are performed without delay. So in no time, these activities are performed like a turning wheel. And so in no time, without delay, one achieves longevity, merit, the common and supreme cities. What is the purpose of the two Manjushri mantras?
Da de ndenye sara wangishor maam da onara pasana di. Dandere on wangishor maam shiba de tunda la sung wan sho sinandun dere. On ara pasana di sedu
Sungi Wangsogra.
sung wan so. On ara pasana di shiba de rowa ju rowa ju mimpar shiba. La tene sinjila lo shibeton cha de yore rowa gju ten de kantar o wang shor mam shiba de ningbo cha de yore da jambe yang ke ningbo ten zang de namje nga zo te nyalne ji de da song so so tambo rang ju mi tene yin ju drawers da challenge of chan da ben then tarate sung wansuk on wangshor momte teni suso ranju trowala nyamni chi teni yimi parsebala on arabasa nadeshiba
Rangi Mimpati Wangishwari Mom, Tini Shengi Tarp Joyalati Omarapata.
Yinju senjala lo shi arabasa nade koran tsik legjaj ke tsik nandun te dawaje chade yore te ina ya da yang 저저글로 소소라니 게 냠니 가리토라 제바이나 란주 트로바데 인주 미바데 톱토고 요레스니가 돈 이나 렉자츠 그런 것 때문에 레게자 대답지리 난도.
So the two Manjushri mantras are Om Vankishwari Mum and Om Amarapatsa Nadim. So the first one, Om Vankishwari Mum, means literally like precious Lord of speech. And Amarapatsa Nadim means the blessed mind that ripens the mind streams of beings. So Om Mum is also the essence of Manjushri. And so actually normally when we engage in practice, this is what happens where it is said by ripening, first we ripen our own mind stream and then we are able to liberate others. And so the ripening of our own mind stream, the precious Lord of the speech, would be the Om Vankishwari Mum, and Amarapatsa Nadi is then to liberate others. So that might be the way to understand the Sanskrit words of the mantra, but in general, actually whatever practice you do will lead to the liberation of your own mind and then the liberation of others' minds.
Penangaranzo yamitaga nama sartu chongkina te manchogan la onwangishora maunte sa go yorwa te ranju mimparsi go yori tambo teni yamitaga nyamlin shibade te yinju dorwar shibaka ayang te nyamlin chi chado yorwa.
For example, in the context of the Yamantaka practice, the Drupchen, so before we are allowed to participate the first time, we must accumulate the Om Vankishwari Mum mantras, because that is what ripens our mind stream. And then after that, the actual practice of Yamantaka would be that second part of also liberating the minds of others. Can you please explain the meaning of the mantra at the end of the aspirational prayer of Dewa Chen? Namo Manjushriya, Namo Shushriya, Namo Uttamashriya Soha.
Tandere chance are zong sugar yoridella. Chance are the raven and zong dere. Deni yena yang Namo Menzishiraya the Jambayang la chance los Namo Shidi Kapsa Namo Shiba the younger. Dene Nama Sukireva Hiraya Seme Namo Sukireva Shoka Samari Jake Tapo Devigona. Chetan Namo Shiba the Nama Shiba de Nika chance of Donda Jiba Imbala Maran Sola the Sumta Kandru Yubana Yin Jakela Sumta Kandru Devindu Dene Nibadela Nama Nama Sukire Nama Sukire said Lipala chance a loso. Then Nama Atama Shire Sova Sundedini Chok Pala chance a loso. Dere Dandara Kandaran Dila Jambari Shibande Shirab Naransu Shirab Late Rale Yonguri Day into Masus Chance Ardu Tambo Kunzop Yung over Tony Chance Yong Baji. Then it day lo de ya Remjin Drone Namasekireve Lipars ya Kanza ya lo de Nampardeva. Then Chog Pala Chance lo sendu. Deni Lataran Sam Yermi than Jibaton Chan Sarza than Sarzi Jabzi lesson Sama, then Nisime Tung Titon Rokuyori Tungotola. Deni young Kunzo Rangaton says some time and Deni like a girl, no moments shire to go down Deni Sonda to Tandala the Hejana and the Hejaya the Yoda Yorite Cantarte Chance of Zonri Nandonte Tambote. Menzishirela chancelo, then in Yabate, Likpala chancelo, then somebody chode, chokpala chancelos.
So the mantra is a mantra of homage, prostration. So Namo Manjushriya is a prostrate, a pay homage to Manjushri. Then it says Namo Shushriya. So actually, to say Namo here is not precisely correct in terms of Sanskrit. So according to grammar in Sanskrit, it should be Nama Shushriya. And it means I prostrate to a great glorious one, to great glory. And then Namo Uttamashriya, so that is I prostrate to kind of the supreme glory. So the first one, Manjushri, is related to wisdom. And so now, from a relative perspective, when we prostrate in those 3 times, we kind of progress gradually. So first we prostrate to Manjushri, and then secondly is the prostration to great glory, and so here one's mind increases, develops, and then when we prostrate to supreme glory, then the mind and the deity's mind merge non-dually. And then there is no more division between one who prostrates and prostration. So that's from the ultimate perspective. From the relative perspective, one can also explain it from the perspective of the deity's body and speech and mind, those 3 steps. So prostrate to Manjushri, and prostrate to great glory, and prostrate to supreme glory. I read that if a mala is offered to a Buddha's neck, you shouldn't take it back and use it. But I wrapped one of my malas around the Buddha statue on my shrine because I've seen people place their malas on their statues in a similar way. I didn't know about this rule when I placed the mala there. Is there any way for me to take the mala off and use it without causing any harm or karmic repercussions? 탱아와 나랑 그 탱아데 나 상게 곤다요와 이게 깨라 따린 이는 게
그거는
깨라 그러라 되니 깨라 따베 갑라 되니 티초렌 초가 마레 하고 오면도 얘네양 깨라 따차도 깨라 근차도 되니 미 가셔게 랍도 다 상게라 되니 쳐차도 깨라 근차도 되니 양게 초렌 초가 마레 틱바레스 다디 불배 갑라 하고 오면도 다 가서 샤르와 깨라 따라 양 탱아디 고고도 되니 양 초렌 초거래 랭에 봐 마사야
내래 kulhon ra le de yore tambo tambo choran ke pha phya de kulhon bhajen na ba ni bo karon na shuba yin nge chir dang choran kulhon chama hing mar de je choran ke yam phyu ne tini te jungze ku kunda le ke jungze ku cha de chalen ya de chu ke sinlam da rewa che ne tena jige yo sibares tenan de ke yore dikpas tikpa chaga yo mare sunam ke de jo chada yores ngaron chuk tara chi ge ngarang ka chi nyo te thingwa ke mar de dorji dundi tubak ko tela teni nabza ya che zo sarpa nyon ya yo te ke nabza ning ba chatero se teni za chim bo chi nyar ne
esto napsa sarpa ina shorwa tambo teni nimba de nga chotero chi
nga sarpa nyon te ya kong ro
solati tote den la
dorji din sha ja to ba la teni ning ba ku chin de nga la tero chi se na te ro
ti te ro
te ne teni nge te za chim bo nyar ne teni punja tan so go sha ja ne teni so tenda cheta tong ro se han ro ram ram bo chi yo ro ten te de ge yo res ne so cheta ta in la me da kong te tenda chi ya yo ro
lap thoda
te la so ba chi ge yo ro mo ta so ke
nga lap thoda de aya
teni yang je kare res na che dambo phu ga da tin ya phu cha de o te nga thwa za chi mo phu ro sa ma tin na te ge ji ke dikpa cha sun de juba se dikpa la ge wa lan juba dikpa lan juba ge wa es te insa te xiao pa chen na ya bo yo re pa che kulong te ni ba ga rong to ne phu yo si ba re te ni yang che yang ma hi bu ton tra che na cher dang nga zang ka jung le te la ya yo re ma re ma shi ma go sum desum jar pu tham la mi si thumga mari si da de le de nani ni ba yo mari se ma tan jeng da la ko yo re
chula kamarwa mela kara
de chu la cha te re tong te la ngo yo re de jitin sung go ke mi shi te muk ni ba yin le je song song yo re de san je song ba da chi ba re
mishi temo
ni ba yin le je se gon je na
ni pa gi
ni ba yin tham je le ja ni ba chia re si
oh
Tens da kanda chuk ni ba chapchin sa do nge la ko yo mari te chorang kulhong te du kanda chi son te so so ha ko chi tene xiao pa chi yo da de ba le yong ti min na xiao ben da ba de ba yong de ro
so that really depends on your motivation so you might have one of two different kinds of motivations when you place that mala around the neck of the Buddha. And of course, I don't know which one is your motivation, but one is where you already have the intention of offering it to that Buddha for a little while and then receive it back as a blessing. So if that's the motivation to begin with, then that is fine. There's no negative karma. And so then, for example, what people do actually could become a cause of merit. For example, what people do is often when they go to Bodh Gaya, there's this special Shakyamuni statue, the very blessed statue. And people, for example, they bring new Dharma robes and then they place it onto that they robe that Buddha in that new robe, and then they're requesting the old robe that he had worn for some time to receive that in return. And then that's possible, and then I would consider this old robe of the Buddha to be very precious, and I would keep it as very precious, and I would share it with my family members and so on, or use pieces of it for, we do that for the cattle like yak and so on, life liberation. Then they receive one of those little pieces of cloth as a sign that they're liberated. So this is all okay. On the other hand, if you really actually just wanted to make an offering, and later you feel that, or actually I would like my mala back, then if you regret. And so it is said that when you regret virtue, it becomes non-virtuous. And when you regret non-virtue, it becomes virtuous. So when you regret, then you should perform confession. So it could be you could have had any of these motivations, but in general, in terms of not knowing at all, some people say that if you're ignorant of something, if you just don't know or don't understand something, then you're also not at fault. And actually, Thigten Songkwan clarified that, and he said that actually ignorance and unknowingness is an even greater fault than any other karma. So I'm not saying that that's what you have done, but you have to see for yourself what your motivation was and possibly confess. And actually, even though negative actions have no good qualities, if they had one, it would be their potential to be confessed and then purified. I have been using a Rudraksha mala for general purposes, including Undro. Is it okay? I've heard somewhere that in Tibetan Buddhism, Rudraksha is preferred for wrathful practices.
Chirtan de nga dusuna de tarachurang laba yindo tingwa la chepa yore trabu ke le dubzila trabu ke tingwa rashan tingwa teni shawa jeba wang teni tingwa dusula teni senjela nga teni tingwa duso somo la dantang teni kurtang duso pe shipcha yore duso tsama nanchong ji ning yo mare okay yo mare se ju te le la hyu ji ri de yin na yang tim zhe ke ju cho de chun zong ba la ji hyu ji ra le de yo re per na me to de ya ji war se ba la ko la me cha he ke du ji ting ting go yo de me ji lo yin na yang sang se no ne me to ji tu ma ro me cha he ji ne ko lo go yo re ta te la so ba ke tim zhe se ju de pe kar chim bo re teni ngarang su hla dhrude ya te tabi teni tarang kaca ngarang zu la chakjin yabo yore che chingwa su nyo sa pa trato la su pa ni kare damya yorwa teni so la ta pekha mi ba cha yo ma re teni za nyo zini yore ta tada chi na yabo yore jirtang teni yin yang lower de ta chi che tada ke nyamni chi chi go tel tin chula ta damga kayam mi pa chi damga chik ma do mi pa ina yang tel chin ju ban ro chen ne yang ma che nyamni de cham ya yo ta nin ku yo ma re zo chi chung zo par zam len de top jun che mi so ba yin de cha de yu zang zo chi chung cha de yo re ma do nan ta ji de ga za ben ta ji de nin go ma rong go ma ta chu nor su ne de la bya yo ma re
So it is generally said that for certain practices one uses different malas, and the Raksha mala is used for wrathful activities or practices, and then there is different malas for peaceful and increasing and magnetizing activities. And there's different mantras to consecrate these malas, and then there's different fingers one uses to count on those malas, and also different ways of keeping, like wearing the mala. And so there are many detailed instructions that we also should not minimize, thinking that that's all not important, because that's easy to do, the easiest thing to do. But everything is also interdependent, and so everything depends on causes and conditions. For example, if you want to grow a flower, and you have the seed of a flower. Of course, it needs an aspect of heat, of fire, but if you just put fire to it and burn it, then no flower will grow. So the interdependence of many causes and conditions is very important. And so nowadays we have very good conditions, because, for example, you can buy a mala even on the internet, you can buy it anywhere. So you actually often have a choice. And also a mala is nothing that we cannot afford. So that is ideal, but sometimes it happens that something comes up suddenly and you happen to need your mala to practice. So sometimes you just don't have a choice. And if you don't have a choice, then you also shouldn't regret using a different mala, and you also should not, that should not make you stop the practice or not do the practice. So if you have no choice, then it is good. So then you can use any mala. So then one shouldn't say that, oh, you shouldn't use this mala, it's a mistake, and so on. But only if you have a choice, then you can use a different one. As a practitioner, what are the signs that I should adopt? What are signs that I should adopt the antidote to a negative obscuration that arises, instead of simply maintaining pure view towards all phenomena? And similarly, what are signs that I should adopt pure view towards all phenomena instead of cultivating an antidote?
다죠 다다하 고소나 다 중화 임바 존 야게도 삼소나 되니 마음 발라데 디팅와에 대 문로 요야라 저종 거야로 자게 요마련 다직도 이난 중화데 요유닌 그 말했어
그래?
욕마야스 냐냐데 자침보 차차라와
So also if you, about the mala question, if you, for example, when you did Yangwondro in the past, if you used this Raksha mala, then you should not regret that at all. Just now you understand, and you can use a suitable mala for your practice. So there's no need to always then hold on to it, but also you shouldn't just throw it away. You should keep it as something very precious. Rudraksha. Rudraksha. Pena dupa da wachi shasana negative obscuration. Dupa ta ta paksha nyamba insara. Teni di kapla teni mixe gi nyempo tengo rewe yana chu thamche ki thana choman ki rewe teni samsan layang samsan portuna tirewa samsan nyempa den yagare samsan thanang gom yagare rewa thanang gom betu khature teni thanang ma gom nyempo den tu khature kansan samsan nyempo gom gona pena mituk padawa gom ka thanang marawa teni samsan nyempo den gorawa samsan thanang yong gom marawa thapsi pena nga pumola chapa ina teni tela mituk pa gom gora thanang phendo samsan yuwa marawa tindawo tata ti kapla nyempo tengo gdora ti kapla nga thanang jigito thapsidao moda uthi shasana ati ha kore
dade suso kerange de lolara le de yore de yena ya de dia dara de cha de yore nimbo tin hi ba danang de jichap gu nimbo cha de yore ba danang de jichap gu nimbo cha de yore yena nimbo hyuk chimbo hyu cha de yore dene ti dara de pen pemile cha and modo gombando na lower ke de lower ke che do cha ro che lower de ko cho balam chwana gyun chon de tek ma khap de ja yak chi de dene duyung tung thong la data we na danda cha de yores ma do duyung tung thong na 카톡 ke che nimbo tin du de nimbo tin ya ga yores dene 용 스도바 진주와도 저야보지 동고나 단항장고를 단항데 되니 님보 자치기 차도요래.
So which antidote you apply depends on your own state of mind, but in general, a pure view is definitely the most powerful antidote. And for example, when things happen momentarily, when you're suddenly in a situation, for example, you develop desire towards a female, then an antidote would be to reflect on the impurity or the ugliness of the female. So it is just like you're suddenly caught in this huge wave that you have to do something about in this moment. So if something is more happening in a more acute way, like suddenly something happens, then it's often better to just apply an actual antidote. But pure view is something that we should always apply to change our entire perception. So that's therefore the best antidote.
다 이나야 로시브란다 마다 요로 그런 때 소라 빠쁘게 드나 차용 거요. 가jel다 님보 주는 선팅과 차용 거요. 때 린체케 바 라교야 요노 차가면도 때 남주 다낭데 같이 모르스.
But then everybody's mind is different. The states of the mind is different. And so therefore there might be some who would have to rely on antidotes for longer than others. So it's not the same kind of fits-all answer. But in general, a pure perception is always important. In the Sama teachings, in the text of Karma Chagme, the practice of Togal is mentioned. Can I practice Togal by myself, or must it be done in strict retreat with instructions?
다 토가르인데 디 직추다 토가르도 냠네 지발라 티다 왕도서 제당게 고요레 데니 이나 다 소소가 다가 왕침보 왕체딘 데다 톱송아이나 데니 양 제당게 데 타지도 소냠네 제바장게 제 가당간로안로 차크요 말에 소소가 왕도서 휴버값서 체딘 춘투비 휴요나 완도 줄이지나 토바인 som바인도 제 체딘 춘투베 데니 담사이도 소야 보송도 와이나 데니 따라 투가르 수냠네 제나 투가르 찌땅 냠네 제나 초그리 말에 세와 대양 당 데니 값 바바게 조랑나 강 티롱 탑데바 티 차케데 냠네 제나 르게 요레스 데니 여완로 제 세거도 페나 따라 티 투가르 코데 조랑 자빈가 치는 버지 데니 티게 토가 그냥민 거지 톱송아 티 차케데 조랑 냠슬라는 르게 요 조랑 티 톱바요 톱요로 데니 난더서 제 페나 제 토가 고용 바값서 데니 우저 더서 곰 데니 우저 리리나나 우저나가 곰 우저나가 리리나나 제 라크 리리 곰 토바이나야 삼제 마차바로 응네란 더서 냠니 데인잔데니 마초바 짱짱을 야야바이나 양 참자한테 냐니 망보제 고가로 요바다 제 차용 거로가 데인저 소소가 데하 톱데 그 차헤데 데니 데지고 요레스 냠니 지고 요레스 페나 조나 뎁진나니 뎁진나니 뎁질라 데 레친도 nga yo na tin na lechin chik chorang ka thop song na ti lechin chik de tin de lo de la gom nyam ni chama bi chogro wa ta da sam tang go yor.
So generally, for the whatever practice one engages in, such as Togal or Tekchu, one should receive for anything instructions and empowerments. And so, for example, if you have received a great empowerment, like in a proper way, and then there would be also no contradiction to engaging in this practice. So so that is you have to understand the meaning of the empowerment to practice it. It is said that only if the meaning of the empowerment arises in your mind, only then have you received the empowerment. And so also for the practice of Toga, so in general, you should receive instructions and transmissions and so on to engage in this practice. But so there's probably different divisions of seeing that. But for example, now this particular instruction of Togol you have received from His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche. And since you have received these instructions, whatever you have heard during these instructions, you can also practice it because you have received it. And so then when you practice Togal, then through this practice of focusing on the rays of light and so on, then 5 lights appear, and in each of these light spheres, deities may appear. So that happens then as a result of practice. So one cannot really put everything into this category of it's not permitted, not allowed, because that will prevent many people from actually doing any practices. But you can see it in this way that whatever you have received, you can also practice it. So for example, if you're reading a book that consists of 5 sections, and you have received the first section, the instructions on the first section, then you can read it and you can also practice it. Regarding the statement, all phenomena come from the mind, does it refer to my mind's personal creating of phenomena, or is it my perception of the existence of phenomena in the outside world?
음.
Di chala dhamira yo marwa. Di chala ngarangi sem drop yores yana. Ngarangi sem den numa drop dewa ki chö thamche drop chabare. Di ngarangi sem thong yore. Derwe nama thamche ngarangi sem siade.
Nawa ran sem shibande tara churang chwa tupa nang yin chunga he churang ke churang kowa thoma me pa nang kowa ndala yong ne tene namdo na chobwa la tene ramra zuya le tipak cha de sem na u chadu tene chu mangbo je human zuya ba da je cha de yores ena yang ga tene mangbo je da zo ko ninka nimo mani ba kapso ya zo yimba sine ni ba kapso ya zo yimba mlan sun chu ngol da mangbo je zo yimba da na chi cha de yores
Chö so shimba.
Das same ka zo ro yoro ba
Chö den so.
chu tham je same go zo chu tham je same go ran zo yin hi ban de den same ka zo ro yore per na pe chung chung je ya ba yana me je ke ja ji cek je ye na de la kwa lin dang ka to ni de ni de yong go do ke ja de ya bo chan ro ya dang ke ja de du ja cha ya so so rang san da wa de da be de sem go zo ro yo ra de ni dara chung jo chim bo nang do so lo song re sem korang la ma ro da korang la sem zu che yo ma re si de nga rang zu sem ke ko da de ni ba da me ni ba si ne zu ya ba re song re de
Da se na da wo ge da ra.
ma ra sam chol ko ya da jin do de korang la ni ba da me ni ba si che yo ma re de ni nga rang zu sem ke jing ni ba zu jing ni ba zu ya ba de yan zang ga he de da ra zo yo re ga hin ni ma zu ya ba yan zang de ni churang la ba da yi cha de yo re si
So we say that appearances are one's own mind, and so as it is as you say, since beginningless time in samsara, we have developed an infinite number of thoughts, and they have created all of this. They have created all these imprints in the mind which create all of these phenomena. So there are many phenomena that we have already created, and then there's many that we are in the process of creating. We are constantly creating them at daytime when we are awake, and also we are even creating them when we are sleeping at night. All phenomena are the manifestation of one's own mind. For example, if a person says something, then depending on how you choose to understand this, it becomes either something good or something bad. So that depends on how you see it with your own mind. So what the person said, therefore, the negative or good thing that the person said is a creation of your own mind in this way. Also, this is mentioned in the Bodhicharyavatara that there is nothing inherently true about pleasant or unpleasant sounds. But it is a label that we give a sound depending on how we see it. So this is how it is. So some of those phenomena we have created, some of them we are in the process of creating. Can you explain a bit more about the wisdom winds?
long shibanda jertang long nang long chawa lan jo go yore ngara zo di sim la nyuksem hin da chamo sen yon de nyuksan chawa nyam de le ka chin kin de la yishig long si di chan de re yin na yang dara ngaran zo ge nam to rakwa nyumong ba la so ba tham je yang deni cher de juzi de long la ra le de yore de de so je jin hi ga ha ko ba to ni yang na chen ha dang yang na ye dang lai rang zo la cher ji de ba ina di long de so cher yi shi jung lo jor de ba cha de yore yang ngaran zo ye dang go la je gon ne je cha dang mo song chi de gom so ina ne de di gom zi ge long de ya de ni ji yi shi ge long de pa nam to ge long le cha song an ra je cha de yore nyu mong ge long le cha song an ra cha de yore ta gang de yi shi ge long xi ban de za ge wang de sen na za ha jiang zhang bu lu zhang na za zhang na long zhang na sem zhang se de ya de nan de wa ji yore wa de zan de so re de ni yi shi ge long xi ban de ngarang zo la dewe nyam sarva nyam motoba nyam jizi ke danda ke chowa zenari danda jizi ke ta long de so chama yi ge long cha de yore du cha hedang la so ban de so jin yan de long de de ne yang da de ta nam to le long ro je na de ro yore wa le long na long la le long de xi long ni de yi wa xi wa ina den du ga zo qi hu de da long xin de cha wa ge ran yin de zo tam jie cha xin server ran yin de so cha ma yi xi ge long cha de yo re si
So the wisdom winds are generally very, very subtle winds. They are the winds, which is the innate natural state of the mind. So the subtle winds or kind of energies that move or do things on a subtle level of the innate mind are the movements of the wisdom winds. And so then the cutting through the coarse afflictions and thoughts depends on these winds. So also thoughts and afflictions are certain wind movements. So these need to be recognized with mindfulness, or we visualize the deity or recite the mantra. Then if one is able to do that, one can transform these afflicted winds into wisdom winds. So the winds that are kind of, if we practice a Yidam deity with those winds of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, then it becomes ordinary. Then the Yidam deity becomes ordinary. So then when the kind of wisdom winds become karmic winds. And if through the wisdom winds, this is how wisdom winds become afflicted winds. And then how do afflicted winds become wisdom winds is first, the body should be straight, and it is that if the body is straight, then the channels are straight, and then the winds move straight, and then the mind is clear. So then the wisdom winds are those that generate those experiences of bliss, clarity, and non-thought. All of these movements are wisdom winds. And then the movements of desire and anger and so on, these are the karmic winds. So there's basically these two kinds of winds. And the wisdom winds are the winds that are extremely subtle and also luminous. Awesome. For men, does ejaculation of sperm correspond to a loss of drop? What about women? Is a wet dream the same as the loss of drop in a dream? Is the loss of drop related to the white drop and or red drop? The magic tigle shoyorava, tangsa tigle nyamsea the magic drova da vojena, teni pura po, puran drova jena, teni ko tigle shonora, the tigle nyamsea derves, teni tina teni bumeyang. Tina tigle yamarava, shoya yamarava, punang shinra. Teni pumo kanda da vados tigle nyamseate. Teni datam ya. Teni shamba ten drama. Teni milam ki kapla yang po kashi tena yang sare. Milam ki kapla teni tigle shoya. Teni tiang tigle nyamsea reves. Teni tigle nyamseate. Tile kapo tang tile mapo ni galan java yorve.
De chetang de tile nyampo ke jo nga he yore da khatsang he rang hyu simba ma malam ta julam ta tini yang darate lu ngurchur da dongwa la so ba tan so to ne tile nyam hi ba da ta ji do sane ni ba je tile nyam ba te chamla ko yo mare tile nyam hi ban da zo de ne so so malang ka kap so de ne je pomon da wo ji na je tan da jo wa se ba malang tang ne so so de wa zo nu de o ta te de ne de ga wa de zo ma ta ne de ne nyam yong ko yo ba andal sang no tang go yo res
Tile nyam se adirwa.
Tile shibanda pa du yo na rikpa tile longsam chawa to so some the main man da ta ya la ma to ke tene don thor chikpa cha de yo re ten du ta kantar tile tara de choran chawa na yin tara bu ke tena ke tama nyam ro te tile nyam ba ri ta tile nyam ba na te chibu yin go ngi ba yo ma res 대 저런 대화 냠수와이나 되네 저런 간다르티 티나나 도요레 되네 텔레 카포 다마포 시반데
티 부모치 바레라 부모치 바라와
데 부모라 대화 냠죠죠 대화 냠수와나 말랑캅스 되네 간달 군도 그치ane 데 군도 차바 라소바드나고 완수 хорсуан 지바차데 요로와 되네 나란서 데칭기 이시 센도한데 데와드 좀톱 거 요로 마냠바 가와 예냐니 지두 가다르 시반데 갑소티니 데와트소 좀톱 거 요레 데 이나야티니 데와드 냠도데 간다티레 냠송하다 동고 톨레 지바차데 요레스 드니 초인도
드니 tile nyam se ati tile mapo and akabon rava yore
ta ten rewa yo me se va de cherta male thopa ke tile mapo te zo ngarang zu lukam ko wang se de sane la ne watang pa le to patile carbon de min sam la ne namju ta be na ne ke yore sung ko yore de den so so rani la da de yabo ke de ni ke le sung ke ta ta ma tile yoro wa to so la zer mas tile nyam se dara de ni je nyam so wa de la ta ji de ko jo ma res de nyam sun de ne he no ha.
So the other day during the teachings, we mentioned a few causes that lead to the loss of one's drops. And so we mentioned that some of them, for example, are during the dream or also during our activities or when the body is extremely exerted, like really sweating and exerted. So here we are not only speaking, when we speak about the loss of drop, we are not only speaking about the secret chakra. For example, like it doesn't mean that actually there is like an ejaculation from the secret chakra, but also during the dream state, for example, if you dream about like the sexual union of male and female and bliss arises, and then you cannot, you're completely overtaken by then the bliss, and so then you have like an orgasmic dream experience, but that's still just in your mind. So actually we call it the drop, like a bindum, or we can also call it awareness or wind mind, different names that have a single meaning. And so basically the loss of drop really occurs at those times when we actually lose the drop, so when we actually have an orgasm, but it doesn't only happen at those times when we have a physical orgasm. And so because females also orgasm, it's the same for them. And so in our practice, what needs to be realized is the awareness, the wisdom of great bliss. So in order to recognize it, one must retain it. So one cannot recognize the bliss if one loses the bliss. And so like literally, orgasm means to lose the bliss. And so that when that happens, then we cannot retain it, we cannot recognize it. And regarding the relation of the white and the red drops to the loss of drops, so it is generally said that the red drops the drop that we have received from our mother abides in the secret chakra area, and the white drop that we have received from our father abides at the point between our eyebrows. And so here we are speaking not about actually liquid drops, but they are the subtle, the vital, kind of the essential subtle drops. And they are not lost when we here speak about the loss of drop, because if you would lose those drops, then you would die.
The courage in the Malato particular marble sanel and Edeva, the Tan Palato particular carbo, means on your banda, the around to Jima Hen do the Tinitzan and Zalamnity Palato particular carbo Mayon. Sane katile maboya yone te tumok tobak tene le London driver Tony David tene Quran in drain tene ngaran so jar lavno jawa la subada te so hugo culture ramba mambo song ko yore ta temram to so mambo song ko yore ta te so kap so song yong ko yore kandar tara ngaran so ke tile sela bondo yande tile nyamba tsake yore is So
then this red drop that you have received from your mother, which is at the secret place, and the white drop received from the father at the point between the eyebrows. When you actually die, then it is said that the white drop of the father descends down, and the red drop of the mother from the secret place ascends, rises up, and then they meet at the heart. And so it is then said that, like ordinarily, then one goes during this time, one goes through, until they meet, one goes through different phases of dissolution where thoughts of ignorance and so forth cease. So this is also related to the karmic winds then. So basically there's many different levels of dissolution when we die, and the red and the white drops are related to that. But then here, when at ejaculation does constitute a loss of drop, but it's not the only way to lose the drop. I would like to practice the Jigong Kagyu Ngondro. How can I receive some teachings about how to practice it?
Kandab laguri na te lama ge shini tingora tene logari te kandab nyamle chegole sidi ta ngundo nyamle sibala twa ya bo yore te ndare ta lodo nam yini gozon nyamare re yendo tandabe tene tambo che tene cha tene se te gap su jam so yen tene remji mendar da yigja da lama namjur to soren ji gomne tene dawan mantune tena gom go yor te tara chapchang ta dara nyamne ji go je he go na tene to so gan dang yo mare tene zo che hyu lama ge bi ni ten ne tene tanda je na de nga cho na te mai na tanda yore ta tara che na cha ke des ka ngare ma do ke tene kasakala yojure tendu nyamne ba te ta bichiri nordu cha shiban terwalin trewa
So it's a good question, but basically to practice the Ngondro, you need to rely on a lama who instructs you. And so there's many steps to that. So you begin with the 4 thoughts that turn the mind. You practice every day. And then you come to the practice of prostration, where you visualize the refuge field, the refuge tree. And you practice Vajrasattva and Mandala and the Guru Yoga. So just day by day, month by month, you just keep practicing. But of course, there's no time now to explain every practice in detail. So for that, you just need to rely on a lama, a teacher, that normally is accessible. But of course, now due to the pandemic, it's difficult. But otherwise, there is teachers all over the place that can give you teachings on that. What is the difference between the practice of the Amitabha sadhana and the practice of Jigong Poa, since both practices aim to take birth in Amitabha Pure Land?
All right, then the Jerdang Poa nyamlin ji bande chara la ba yindri de dewa jinan royak jolam ri magum poa sangja se da chedam poa ko langaran so gonjing na yori sangni yamajin jana yonggo yori de kolla tene poa shiba de tumong mayin ba ke sanje ke dewa jina tene jogbo da joyak nyamne chi cha de yori gartsi churang ke jik sendala nguso che tena ke nyamni chimbo mazong ba yin yang churang ke che deba dang dela soba ke che namjung ke che simba zambo janchok sem yo deba dan danda ke yesen ne lama gewhin sini de demba dan sini demba hiba de ninji de demba de da chi da che ne den de po ta yo na de cho ke chigla de ne dewa ji singana ke chi chigang ne ya dewa jing pon de ba de la po shi ba de don da de le de ne nam jing ngarang zu cho wa dang ra de nyang ne ji wan de yang de ri nyang ne de ke ju ne yang je zin de nyang ne nam jing ngarang zo Amitabha nyam ne che ba de ne yin sim ji mambo la pin to ba rang za ma ze ba ke che yin semji hajang zhangmang bola tene pinta tene tanaga ji nimba danya chogandon ya yadang la gom ya tela sobola tene tene gewa lap chimbo je yong yo re den de nila nandun chorang ga ko yate dewa chin chibo jo yambal chepa yo mo re chik ta phoa den jolam do sabojila nguzong yo re tene ina yang jolam yime ya kansa susol ta juri do 소소라 창고 그 적진대 히라 마창나 되네야 포아 tumba지고케 휴휴치가 메데완로 죠
이나양 간데 교거리
아
한스나 포와스나 교게 베나 시차드 nga taring shikona phowa gi nga deba chengge gi ra nga taring shitsade ba me nyama deba chengge gi yorwa niga deba chengge gi yorwa chik yogore cheno
제 라마치 핵직 jan 좀 파인로야
ne khodi chetan munjo de chetan 콩 마렘 phowa de layang sadana yorwa dokap ti tapang dong gi yorwa teni bana phowa madon ba me madon tak tenguna bana deba chengge ko na teni choko chik digido teni niga go maro teni niga yorwa deba chengge choka mandawa ni yorwa chi phowa re chi ba mere phowa senang서 choka lago 그다
알레 다라 탑들 건들
그래서 냐면 지기 열 밤오다고 검담나 지기 열 방서 종구 열어봐 대당 딱디 개발 요사라 봐 가이신당 가까서 오고 열어봐
다 포아데 간달 냠는데 뉴람 차도 요르스 뉴람 포아 뉴람이 송고 요르 뉴람 되네 남정 알아서 냠는데서 되네 람 산지 간달 람라 망고 바탄 람라 야쿠 람망고 데바탄 야 공데 야 퍼나지 다와 양유 그 다와 이더 림지 안로는 반데 답을 거 여러봐 포아시 반데 냠린데 되네 람상 그제 되네 대와치는 안로 답이야 드라 그때 지금 유리나 저랑 데니까 진 냠린지 지도 고 데니까 마제나 제야미 바테 답을 말이 데니는 가롱 제나
So for the poem, it is said that the poem practice, the poem is the quick path to Dewa Chen. So it is said that that without having to even meditate, one can take birth in Dewa Chen through poem. For example, if a Lama practices poem for you. And also more on that will come later in the Gongjig in a few days. But the special quality of poem is that it leads to enlightenment very quickly. And so especially if one is someone who didn't really have the opportunity to do a lot of actual practice in this life, if you just have faith in the poem, if you have generally good heart and you cultivate bodhicitta, then that is the foundation. And then also on top of that, you meet with a qualified and authentic guru who possesses also compassion. Then if such a guru practices poa for you, then it is that instantaneously you can be born in Dewa Chen. And so normally when we practice sadhanas, like the Amitabha sadhana and so on, also through these practices we can bring about the benefit of many sentient beings, not just our own benefit, but limitless sentient beings. So for that we practice the sadhana, we recite the mantra, we visualize the deity and so on. That accumulates a vast amount of merit. So as you say that actually the meaning of those two practices is really the same because they both are causes to be born in Dewa Chen, but it is said that Poa is the swift, the quick path. And of course it also depends on oneself because also for that all the criteria have to be complete. So if these conditions are lacking, then just the recitation of Poa itself, it's not so certain whether that alone will be sufficient. Generally it is said that beings are gradually liberated, so beings are established on the path, And then those who are established, their path improves, and then their realization of the view improves, and so on. But the poem is a method where we can instantly take birth in Dewa Chen. So you can practice either one. It doesn't mean that if you practice one but not the other, that you will not be born in Dewa Chen. So you can practice either one.
Tadde po ande tanti teni ki chepan rote sacha chilan rogo na langkor nan rowa tan namre nan rowa ni la chepar yo ba yindu teni nyumjo katara ki chepar che ya ngunzi chi ke yore ngunzi nang ke yore teni soso nguni ore te hyu chaim ba ta hikan teni yina yang ta kantar soso la ra le do yores nyurwa dan yoba hiba de teni zo chi hyu de soso la ra le do yorwa teni ta zhwa nangkin tsama la nyingtaba ni jisi ran shua ta chiran tsu zhwa ande teni chiran tsu ka chu cha de yoris zhwa ande chiran tsu ka chu ndala teni mo mambo ke teni dongda mambo sibo cha to ya nyamlin chi tang tena yin zang pin chun teni jisi ran jena ngune ji uba je re teni zhwa pe yabo ndo teni ngarang ke gang hihi je lin tabyo bare teni ta daralin taba dis dola chiran so ke tabje ji samno tang nge gang lamna o te ri ya sen yama yana te jira teni chiran so lo hira ku to ke yang dongda mambo je a go to ba yang pa zu drolain je tan na teni yang te dela ka sarwa tenda ke pin to chimbo yore teni namjön ta nga chi pa ngak zen de pa che hie de yor de ta zhuan de ju zu cha zhen de ngarang de chur ka chun ra cha de yor de nin ta ban ne ka den che de ne zhuwa chama ya bo dang zhuwa chung ki chama tu ji che de ne nga ye dang ka re sing de cha nga de chi la yin ba de nge chi la zhe mo hie de ma yang chak ja na wo de na ma yin si de ne de na zhuwa de la nin ta ban ka den che
So the POA difference between those two practices is mainly that the POA is the swift path. So for example, if you want to go to a certain place, you can travel by car or by airplane. So one is quicker than the other. So this is usually how it is recognized. But whichever one you will accomplish depends on yourself. And so then I would like to say thank you for all the questions. I really rejoice from the bottom of my heart. And your questions really have become a teaching also to me. And also it clarifies many important points to many other people, helps their practice. So this is something we can rejoice in each other's questions. So they were all excellent. And I answered them to the best of my abilities. And later, it is also good if you keep reflecting on the meaning of that, not just let it be with, oh, this is how it is, but really use your wisdom mind, because then the understanding will be even greater. Or also if you discuss the meaning of that with each other, then the meaning of it, the understanding of it will become even more clear. So normally I'm giving these Dharma teachings, but when you ask questions, it's like it becomes a teaching coming back to me. So I'm very grateful for that from the bottom of my heart, and I thank you all very much. So I also wanted to say, when you asked about what is my Yidam deity before, I was just joking. I didn't mean to be cynical in any way. But anyways, thank you.
May every being ailing with disease be freed at once from every malady. May all the sickness that afflicts the living be instantly and permanently healed.